The 2024 NBA season is right around the corner, which means it is time for my annual preseason predictions. But before we dive into it, here are some things you need to understand. This video is not a championship predictor, nor is it even a power ranking. Rather, these are my thoughts on how I believe the regular season will play out with each team in their final standing position. So I'm anticipating 15th to have the fewest wins, and first to have the most. Injuries, suspensions, and personal reasons pull impactful players off the court each and every year, and 2024 will be no different. It would be cool to see Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Zion Williamson, Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, or Ja Morant available all season long, but that's not going to happen. So take that into consideration before you attempt to roast me in the comments for putting Team A above Team B. Now, with that out of the way, let us dive into this year's predictions. Eastern Conference first. Finishing dead last at 15th, I'm going with the Detroit Pistons. This is without a doubt the easiest team to rank going into all of the 2024 campaign, East or West. The brightest star to follow easily will be Cade Cunningham, who, though he missed most of his sophomore season in the league, has looked terrific leading up to this season. Over the summer, Cunningham shined with the Team USA Select squad that manhandled the actual US team. Cade has a floor game that coaches dream of thanks to his confidence, IQ, handles, and passing. But through the first 76 games of his career, he shot an abysmal 30% from deep, which isn't even close to being good enough in the modern NBA. If he can improve his outside shooting, his team's spacing will improve dramatically, and things will get easier up in Michigan. Surrounding him are a bunch of young guys with dramatically different expectations. Guys like James Wiseman and Marvin Bagley are still fighting to prove they even can start in the NBA after being selected second overall in their respected drafts. Both are on the brink of forever being labeled busts. Then you have last year's rookies who have already proven themselves valuable. Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren both may come off the bench to start the year, but I anticipate their high-level play forcing their coach's hand, which will surely cause some drama. This year's number 5 overall pick, Asar Thompson, also is a big question mark after spending the past 2 years in the experimental Overtime Elite League. If you think about it, Cunningham, Ivey, and Thompson are all supposed to be point guards of the future. Plus, perhaps you feel you still shouldn't write off Killian Hayes, who is still only 22 years old, and himself also has a pretty good floor game. Maybe he will put it all together this year. The only two sure thing veteran types on the roster are last year's leading scorer Bojan Bogdanovic, who has shown no signs of slowing down, and newcomer Joe Harris, who can space the floor with the best of them. There are a lot of interesting pieces on this Detroit team to pay attention to throughout 2024, but ultimately the rest of the conference is just way better. Coming in at 14th, the Washington Wizards. I am not sure what the Wizards are doing right now, honestly. Their roster is largely made up of win-now prime players, but when you look at their names, it makes you scratch your head. The first guy I really want to highlight amongst the newcomers to their team is not someone you likely have heard much about over the offseason, but to me, he is the quiet addition that will keep DC off the floor in the East. Tyus Jones is a terrific under-the-radar point guard. Though small and honestly not very athletic compared to other starting point guards in the league, Jones has a handle of the game like some of the greatest. His playmaking, ability to create without committing turnovers, and modest floor spacing are going to be the constant stabilizer for their offense every time down the floor, and hopefully raise his teammates' shooting efficiencies. Of course, he has a couple teammates who are known to be a little too eager to chuck up bad shots. Jordan Poole played a crucial role with helping the Warriors win the championship 2 years ago. You cannot understate that. But he also shot them out of some games last year, which is why he finds himself now playing in DC. He just had a 41-point game in the preseason, which actually ties a franchise record. Also, Kyle Kuzma last year amped up his shooting totals without really getting any better. So if the coaching staff can design an offensive system that runs through Jones to create higher efficiency shots for those two guys, then DC may fight for a play-in. But I believe the depth beyond these three guys is a little too lacking to confidently put them any higher. Denny Avdia reminds me of Mario Hezonja. which means he's actually pretty good at a lot of things on the court, but he isn't that good at any one thing to justify big minutes. Daniel Gafford is an extremely efficient scorer on the rim, who also blocks shots and rebounds, but he's not a big-time producer. Newcomer Landry Shamet was signed by the Suns to a long-term deal to be a sharpshooter off the bench, but he was given up because he's like an average shooter at best and that's his only skill. And Danilo Gallinari missed all of last year with an injury, therefore nobody really has any idea what to expect from him this year. He may put up 16 plus per game, or he may put up 6 a night off the bench, I don't know. There is a world where this all works out and the Sixers make the playoffs, but I don't think we are in that world. Next up at 13th, I have the NBA's worst franchise, the Charlotte Hornets. Leading the team is LaMelo Ball, who has the potential to be the league's best point guard. His physical tools, confidence, court vision, passing, dribbling, and shooting are all pretty much at the highest level of anyone in the league. The only gripe that stands with his game is a little bit of decision making, but primarily his injury history. Likely due to a combination of genetics and extreme overuse as a kid, plus some dumb luck, LaMelo has dealt with a myriad of injuries in his short career. Last year, he only appeared in 36 games. If he can stay healthy, he will be an all-star and the Hornets will compete at a high level. Regardless though, the team is extremely top-heavy around him. The most noteworthy of these players around him is Gordon Hayward, a role model and leader on and off the court who can produce on the offensive end, but he lacks much of a defensive impact and he's not going to carry you to any wins. And due to injuries, he's also often unavailable. Hayward hasn't had a season that you would refer to as healthy since 2019. Terry Rozier is an offensive-minded combo guard who thrives when he has LaMelo beside him to create shots, but last year, LaMelo didn't play much and Rozier was extremely inefficient, so we don't know what we're going to see this year. And the new center who emerged late last year, Mark Williams, is a player that I am really excited to see play a full season. I think he can be an efficient rim roller and lob catcher alongside LaMelo, who will give them something like 12 points, 10 boards a night while protecting the rim at above average rate, thanks to his length and athleticism. Now after these four, the good times come to an end. Miles Bridges is not a good human being, but basketball man, basketball good. Therefore, the Hornets appear to be willing to waste another year and a few $1 million on him. If he can return to the floor and pick up where he left off, then the Hornets will definitely be an offensive machine who will generate many top 10 worthy plays every game. But I don't think that's going to happen, nor should it, at least at this point. I think he needs to be removed from the NBA and prove he can be a law-abiding citizen for at least a couple years before he's allowed back in, because obviously 1 year wasn't enough. After him, there is the number 2 overall pick, who a lot of people aren't really that big of a fan of, Brandon Miller. He is one of the most heavily scrutinized number 2s I've ever seen. He fits the mold, though, for the player that the franchise needs in the future. With Hayward entering his final year of his contract and the 4 spot becoming open, they really do need Miller to figure it out. Of course, he's also got some off-the-court legal issues going on, which, that's Charlotte Hornets for you. After that, the Hornets pretty much don't have any NBA players on their roster. It's a bunch of not very good G League talent. So, I thought I was going to rank the Hornets, at least in the play-in, but after the Miles Bridges news came out, they're back down to watching the playoffs from home. Finishing 12th, I'm going with the Brooklyn Nets. It was very impressive to see the Nets maintain their playoff position last year after Irving and Durant ditched them, but this year, the East, in my opinion, is too deep for them to squeak back in. Which sucks because, like Mikal Bridges, looks like an all-star on both ends of the floor. His defense has always been known to be elite, but now you bet the Suns wish they had realized his scoring capabilities were so high instead of insisting on the Chris Paul to DeAndre and forced shots over and over again to keep Ayton happy. A little off topic. Bridges is a great guy to have on your team. He also has not missed a single game in his entire 5-year career, which you just flat out never see anymore. Alongside him is another former Sun, Cameron Johnson, another good shooter and scorer who defends at an elite level. Nick Claxton plays up a weight class inside and has shown great defensive ability thanks to his high IQ and athleticism. And Spencer Dinwiddie may get traded around a lot, but he is good at what he does, and that's why a lot of teams want him. For the second straight year, the biggest question mark for Brooklyn is Ben Simmons. His confidence when we last saw him was at a career low. He has never been able to shoot. He is maybe slightly above average on defense around the perimeter, below average defense inside the paint, and now he fouls too much. And he always goes back to a mystery back injury every time the going gets a little tough. He will be eating up $37 million this year. Just to put that in perspective, the bottom 9 players on this roster, if you add up all of their salaries, you get to about $37 million. The Nets need him to be useful if they want to make the play-in. And I would love to see the Nets make the play-in. I do like this team apart from Ben Simmons, but at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to quite get enough wins. Okay, from this point on, I anticipate making some people upset because there's one team who I think most people have missing the playoffs who I have making the playoffs, and that means somebody else has to get booted. So please bear with me. I'm going to explain myself. I know the luck of the twisted ankle is going to have its way, and I might be wrong. Anyone from 11 to 4 I think could move, but this is where I think they will fall. At 11th, I am going with the New York Knicks. Jalen Brunson outperformed my expectations last year, so please know that me putting the Knicks at 11th is not a fault of his own. He is an elite point guard in the modern NBA, even at his limited size and athletic ability thanks to his sharp skills and good decision making with the ball in his hands. He makes everyone around him better. The Mavericks with Brunson made the conference finals. The next year with Kyrie, they missed the play-in. Think about that. But it's the other guys that keep the team where they are. Julius Randle thinks he is a superstar, and his offense may be at that level, but his defense and attitude on and off the floor are just not good enough. He has the tendency to stand around and watch when not engaged with the play on both ends, and this leads to the team playing 4-on-5 too much. Now don't get me wrong, I like his shooting, his rebounding, his passing. It's the non-box score stuff that keep him a tier below superstar in my eyes. And that's about it for reliable high-level offensive producers. You may want to argue RJ Barrett should be discussed on Brunson and Randall's level, but I wholeheartedly disagree. A shooting guard hitting only 31% of his threes and not playing defense isn't good. Speaking of defense, the defensive personnel of the Knicks is one of the worst in the league, though they do have a good coaching staff to address this sort of problem. The one bright spot I would say is Josh Hart. He can pretty much guard anyone 1 through 4. He's kind of the another version of Jeremy Grant, you could say. That's a very common thing I'm going to be talking about as we go through these teams. Every team wants a guy like Jeremy Grant. Emmanuel Quickley is also a solid young backup guard who should not be overlooked. He can hit the long ball and his defense has improved. But beyond that, I think the team definitely falls off. Mitchell Robinson is diet Hassan Whiteside. Evan Fournier has been banished to the bench, and the team has not drafted well in a pretty long time. I hope I don't trigger New York fans too much, but that's how I see it. Finishing 10th and just barely squeezing into the play-in, I am going with the Orlando Magic. The face of the Magic franchise is Paolo Banchero. I don't think anyone would argue this. He is the former number 1 overall pick who just dominated his rookie campaign to win the Rookie of the Year award convincingly. He has an all-around offensive game and possesses a limitless potential. But in a similar vein to Cade Cunningham, the other number 1 overall pick from another year ago, his biggest issue thus far is his below league average shooting efficiencies. 47% on twos is okay, but not good, and 29% from 3 is pretty stinking bad. It's not good at all. This past summer, Banchero played a lot of basketball with a disappointing Team USA squad in the World Cup, so I hope that despite the poor outcomes of the games, he was able to learn from the better and more refined teammates and other players around the world to further develop his own game. Speaking of better foreigners, the best player on the Magic's team is Franz Wagner. I know he is not the fastest nor the bounciest, but when it comes to basketball, Wagner reigns supreme. His ability to put the ball on the ground and attack what you would think is a superior defender based on athleticism is something to marvel at. He can also stop and shoot from the mid-range at a very high level, and he can space the floor from beyond the arc at a respectable rate. He also moves the ball well, often playing the point guard role. I believe Banchero and Wagner will take steps forward this year, but it will be the other guys who are going to be needed to step up as the X factors to actually get them into the play-in. And the other guys on this team have a very wide range of expectations. The highest paid player on the team may surprise you. It's Jonathan Isaac. If you're pretty young, you might not even know who that is. Isaac just made his return last year after sitting out for over 2 years from an injury. He's a very versatile two-way all-star power forward, kind of like a taller, more athletic Jeremy Grant type, at least before the injury. But last year, he didn't really show a whole lot in the little bit of minutes he did get. Wendell Carter Jr. is a fine player thanks to his on-the-ground defensive ability, and he can score at multiple levels, which is a huge help. But as a rim protector, he's not that gifted, and he can't space the floor very well. Markelle Fultz is a huge question mark. The common trend nowadays is people are really high on him, but the reality is 14 points, 5 assists per game, shooting 31% from deep, as a starting point guard just isn't very good. Though I will say his rim attacking and his perimeter defense have improved a lot. I prefer Cole Anthony as the lead ball handler personally. He had himself a pretty good season last year, outperforming Fultz in most ways. But they also have Jalen Suggs, who is still trying to prove his value after an abysmal rookie campaign. He made significant strides in year 2. Plus they just added another lottery pick point guard in Anthony Black, who is supposed to be another point guard of the future. So as you can see, like the Pistons, the Magic have a logjam of the point guard position, which isn't a terrible thing, but it's not a good thing either. The Magic have a good problem with so many high upside players, but I don't think they're gonna quite yet dominate the league like they maybe can in 5 years. Of course, not everyone will be on this team in 5 years, so it's kind of a nothing statement to rank teams based on young cores. Coming in 9th, I'm going with the Chicago Bulls. Unlike teams like the Knicks, the Bulls are stacked with guys that most win-now teams would want to add to their roster. I would say DeMar DeRozan is the headlining name for the team. The past 2 years for DeRozan may have been the best 2 of his entire career. His scoring ability has not slowed down with age, which has surprised me and many others since he's never been a three-point shooter. But his craftiness and truly elite mid-range shooting efficiencies is what keeps him so great. He also may be the team's best playmaker, as not only is he the best passer on the team, but the defenses are forced to stick to him like glue because he can shoot from anywhere, which helps free up things for his teammates. Now, Zach LaVine is right there with DeRozan in offensive importance. He too is a high-level scorer inside and out, who also passes well and is an elite athlete. But defensively, both DeRozan and LaVine, though not as bad as some people like to claim, they still aren't great. The starting center has some issues. Nikola Vucevic can score on literally any other 5 in the league thanks to his size, strength, and skill set. He is one of the few big men in the NBA still posting up efficiently. Plus, he can step out and hit the 3 ball at a pretty high rate. Honestly, you dream of your team's young center developing the skill set that Vucevic has. But defensively, though big and smart, he's not that good of a rim protector, which hurts the team when there isn't really a Josh Hart, Jeremy Grant type power forward to make up for it. Now, the Bulls' dream version of that role, Patrick Williams, who has shown flashes and admittedly he is an efficient player in general, but he has not quite reached, in my opinion, starter for a contending team level yet. Although you never know, this may be the year. These 4 are the only sure things I think will be playing big minutes, but there's a lot of other guys, like I said earlier, who a lot of good teams would like to have. Alex Caruso, Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, Javon Carter, Andre Drummond, and Torrey Craig all round out a pretty good bench unit. I like the Bulls, but I know they like to lose a lot of games. That's why I have them barely slipping into the play-in. Finishing 8th is the team I think most people would have missing out in favor of the Knicks. I have the Indiana Pacers. This ranking may surprise some people because nobody ever really talks about the Pacers. They are one of the boring teams in the eyes of the casual viewer, but they have a few really good players who I think are past due to make some noise and fight for an actual playoff spot. Their best player is the lead ball handler Tyrese Halliburton. Halliburton is arguably the best player from his draft class, thanks to his scoring, which was 20 points per game, shooting 40% from deep, playmaking 10 assists per game, and his defense 2 stocks per game. His availability is not great, only playing 58 times last year, but if he can get lucky and maybe that number gets closer to 70, I think the Pacers will thrive. Miles Turner, as I predicted, had his best season in the league last year alongside Halliburton. Turner is a dunking and shot blocking machine who can also space the floor a bit. Last year, he got gypped, I would say, and didn't make the All-Star team. This year, if the Pacers are hovering around 500, you might see Turner make the All-Star team. Buddy Hield is also another significant player who thrives alongside Halliburton. Last year, Hield shot 42% from his threes on 8 attempts per game, which is pretty legendary. These three guys will combine for an efficient 60 points a night, but the rest of the team is where I think they kind of fall off, at least offensively. The newcomer and now highest paid player, if you can believe that, is Bruce Brown, fresh off a title run. Brown is looking to be the Josh Hart, Jeremy Grant type do-it-all defensive player who scores effectively but in very small doses. Benedict Mathurin is another guy who I expect to be in the starting lineup. He last year got off to a pretty good start but cooled down significantly as opponents learned his game. Hopefully this summer he was able to improve things like his defense and his three-point shooting. Then you have a pretty good bench unit headlined by Daniel Tice, who just won a world title, where he showed his below-the-rim scoring and defense was still pretty stinking good. TJ McConnell is one of the best true point guards in the league. He is a master floor general and an absolute hound on the perimeter as a defensive player. And then you also have young question marks Jalen Smith and Obi Toppin, two power forwards from the same draft class, picked very close to one another, who now find themselves on the same team because it just didn't work out with their first teams. Both are trying to prove they developed and justify keeping them around in the league. The Pacers are not a popular pick over teams like the Knicks or the Nets to make the playoffs, but I think they're gonna. Coming in 7th, which is a ranking that may surprise the lazy of you, so hear me out, I have the Miami Heat. Last year, the Heat finished the season as the 7th seed, then lost their opening play-in game and ended up the 8th seed in the playoffs. They then went on a historic run to the finals, which I have never seen anyone do. But that is all said and done and is now history. The Heat this summer lost 2 high-use role players from their playoff run. Gabe Vincent and Max Strus are elsewhere. They also got a little bit older, especially Jimmy Butler, now 34, Kyle Lowry 37, and Kevin Love 35. I hate to break it to everyone, but at least during the regular season, this team was not as good as you think they were. And I don't think they're going to be as good this year. Butler will still do Butler-like things. That be elite defense, aggressive scoring, and solid playmaking. Butler will not be shut down by anyone other than the physical wear and tear on his own body. And Lowry and Love, I see taking a pretty significant step back, which they already did last year. Now there's 2 guys who aren't taking a step back. Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero should still be as good as ever. Bam has gotten better every year in the league. He is a superstar on the defensive end, stopping players both smaller and faster, as well as bigger and stronger. And his offensive game, though very slow growing, is becoming more and more refined. Hero has seen his reputation go all over the place, but he is a 3-level scorer who also led the entire NBA in free throw shooting efficiency last year at 93%, which is pretty cool. Sure, defensively, Hero is not very good, but that's not the Heat's biggest problem. Beyond these 4 contributors, there are a couple question mark young guys who may have a surprise impact. Nikola Jovic was huge in Serbia's run to silver in the World Cup this summer. Maybe he'll carry that into the season. Rookie Jaime Jaquez just wrapped up a terrific 4-year college career. Being 22, he should be ready to go pretty much from day one, so maybe he'll make an impact. Then you have guys like Duncan Robinson, Thomas Bryant, Josh Richardson, just a few question mark guys in their prime / maybe a little bit over their prime who you're just not sure what you're going to get. I think the Heat are going to be good, but people putting them in the top 4, I think aren't really thinking through what an 82-game season looks like. Coming in 6th, the most drama-filled club in the league, the Philadelphia 76ers. Joel Embiid should be the most talked about player on their roster. Their reigning MVP, who quite frankly didn't deserve it last year, but the media pushed that agenda to the better end, is one of the top 3 players in the league for many, many reasons. He is an absolute monster inside the paint. He can shoot the long ball as well as put the ball on the floor to destroy anyone in front of him. I and many others feel he settles a little bit too often for the jump shot, but even still, it is hard to scrutinize 33 points per game. Oh, and though it is not talked about as much, he is a really good defensive player as well, protecting the rim. Even if he is guilty of less than 100% effort on that end of the floor a lot of the time. Embiid is not the team's problem. That would be James Harden. I know, big shocker. Ow, that hurt. My kitten bit me. I don't get the guy. He is a good point guard who can score both at the rim and well beyond the arc. He can create for others with the best of them, but he is not as good as he used to be, and his off-the-court conduct has been getting worse and worse with time. This past summer was a bit of a joke. We saw him go on a tour of communist China, bad-mouthing his general manager. He no-showed media day, then a couple mandatory workouts, then showed up and said he was going to be professional, then proceeded to no-show more practices, and then no-showed the last preseason game. Now, we've seen this sort of thing before. Harden likes to he likes to show up his team during the offseason, then he plays himself into shape, and by the end of the season, he's looking like an MVP. But the reality is, every year he starts the season slow and his team loses games that they could win. The thing is, I don't think he's going to actually play a game with Philly this year. I'm not sure what exactly is going to happen, but he's making it very clear he doesn't want to be there, and he is going to dance around whatever loopholes he has to dance around to avoid getting fined, because that's just how these guys work. He will be a drip to this team that should be focusing on winning a championship, and now they're not going to. Backing him up and surely quietly wishing for his demise is Tyrese Maxey, a present-day all-star caliber point guard who has been forced to play second fiddle due to the one guy with a heavy reputation ahead of him. Maxey is a more efficient shooter than Harden, as he hit 43% of his threes last year on 6 tries a night, and he made an impressive 51% of his twos at only 6'2". Maxey also creates well for others, plus he gives full effort every second on the court on both ends. The truth is, he is the point guard the team needs alongside Embiid. Tobias Harris is also an elite third or fourth option scorer. Harris can create his own looks, but is more than happy to catch and shoot in the flow of the offense. He is another guy you won't catch taking plays off or being an issue off the floor. The rest of the team, in my opinion, is pretty low impact players. I do like DeAnthony Mellon as a backup point guard, thanks to his defense and passing. And PJ Tucker may be overplayed, but he is a good defensive player. Paul Reed I like, but he just doesn't play. You could really tail off from there as you start to get to like G League level talent. The Sixers should be competing for the 1 seed, but they're not going to. And anyone who still ranks them in the top 3 is just pretending the James Harden situation isn't happening. At 5th, I have the Atlanta Hawks. I really like the offensive firepower of this year's Hawks, who now have a full year and 2 off seasons of gelling with each other to build chemistry. And they play in the weakest division of the Eastern Conference, which means they are going to have more games against lesser opponents, which means they're going to have more wins. Their double point guard combo of Trae Young and DeJounte Murray is a top 4 guard combo in the entire league. Trae Young may be the best scoring guard in the NBA. He did have a down season last year, but 2 years ago he hit 38% of his threes on 8 tries a night, and he takes a lot of those attempts off the dribble, which kind of throws off his numbers a bit, but his percentages do not tell you the whole story. Plus his playmaking and passing, though people love to be critical of it and think he's a ball hog, the fact of the matter is he is elite at those 2 things. 10 assists per game, and giving his teammates easy shots is a good thing. Then you have DeJounte Murray to form the perfect pair. A fellow high-level scorer who is perfectly content on and off the court as a secondary ball handler. Murray will give you an efficient 20 and 5 every night while picking up Trae's slack on the defensive end. In case you forgot, Murray has made an all-defensive team and flirted with the Defensive Player of the Year award for a reason. He can definitely keep that up with another year mastering the game under his belt. Beyond these two, they have one of the best 6-man guards you will find in the entire league in Bogdan Bogdanovic, a Franz Wagner type player, someone who will not blow you away with it really any one attribute, but he can do it all at a really good NBA level. He can attack the rim, he can shoot from anywhere, and he can create well for others. This trio alone will generate an efficient 90 points per game with their scoring and assists. Then it comes to the interior defense, they also remain strong. Clint Capella is still a 10 rebound and a block and a half per game type center who dunks everything, and his predecessor, Onyeka Okongwu, is right there filling in for him with equal or even higher level production off the bench. The forward spots are genuinely the Hawks' biggest question mark. This past offseason, they dumped John Collins. Without him, I anticipate DeAndre Hunter stepping up his game this year. They are praying he turns into a Jeremy Grant type producer and defender. Then there is another pretty big fall off. Maybe Sadiq Bey will get the nod as the starting three. He showed last year after joining the team that he can shoot the three ball well and he can defend better than I think you'd expect. At only 24 years old, it is reasonable to assume he will continue getting better. And that's pretty much it for the big minute 7-man rotation. There is a ton of offense with these guards, great defense inside, and mystery at the power forwards. I really do like this Hawks team. They had an interesting series with the Celtics last year in the first round. They're not a team that should be overlooked. Speaking of teams that people overlook, coming in fourth, I am going with the Toronto Raptors. This ranking will shock a lot of people, but the reality is I just don't care. Every year, my rankings are pretty sharp, so I'm not going to budge on this. For starters, the wing positions are elite. Pascal Siakam is a Giannis Antetokounmpo type. He can attack the rim with the best of them, he can shoot the long ball, he can rebound, he passes better than most forwards, he plays good versatile defense. Siakam is still in his prime. There is no reason to trade him away and tank like so many people online think they should do. Then you have OG Anunoby, the perfect three alongside Siakam at 4, thanks to how well their games pick up where each other leave off. Anunoby is as elite a defensive player as they come. His 1.9 steals per game led the entire NBA last year. And on top of this, he has a very good outside shot and he finishes around the rim really well. The question mark, you could say, is Scotty Barnes, who at this point looks like the team's starting shooting guard. His game is sort of a blend of Anunoby and Siakam's, but not as refined as either. Barnes has shown flashes of being an elite offensive and defensive talent, but he needs to sharpen his game, in now his third year. 29% from 3 isn't good enough. The next guy that a lot of people may think should just come off the bench is Gary Trent Jr., who, honestly, he might be the starting shooting guard. I think a lot of people overlook Trent when they look at this team. He is only turning 25 this year. He has already shown he is a high-level scorer, and he can shoot the long ball. He is not a point guard, though, which makes the fit with all of these guys kind of weird. At the 1, I think the Toronto Raptors lucked out by landing Dennis Schroeder for basically nothing. There is no doubt that Schroeder plays best as the primary ball handler for his team, which is why things did not go well in Boston or LA. So if the coaching staff uses him properly, I think good things are going to happen for him and his teammates. This past summer, Schroeder led Germany past the Jalen Brunson-led Team USA on their way to a world title. He earned the tournament MVP for a very good reason. You have to go a ways back to see the last time Schroeder's usage percentage was up over 25%, but with the Thunder, he was a 6th Man of the Year candidate behind Chris Paul. He is a really high-level point guard when he's used as a point guard. Then at the 5, you have the dream defensive anchor of any NBA team. Jakob Poeltl will not get talked about much, but he holds down the fort as well as anyone. The Spurs last year were a terrible team, but thanks to Poeltl, they managed a top half of the league rim defense. Alongside the great, long, and high IQ defenders of Anunoby, Siakam, and Barnes, Poeltl and the Raptors are going to be elite on that end of the floor. The only other needle mover I think we're talking about is 20-year-old rookie Grady Dick, who was a high-level scorer in college who also could rebound above his weight class and defend the perimeter decently well. He's a good wild card wing to have available off the bench. I hate seeing people online push the blow-it-up agenda with the Raptors. They're a good team. They should compete and get a home court advantage spot for the playoffs. Coming in third, give me the Cleveland Cavaliers. What can I say? I like the Cavs. Darius Garland is about as good a point guard as they come. He is an elite three-point shooter, hitting 41% on 6 tries a night last year. He creates very well for others, and he defends the perimeter better than you may realize. Plus, Garland is still only 23, so he is only getting better. And he has high availability, which, as we all know, is the most valuable ability. Donovan Mitchell is a perennial all-star who excels at scoring. Last year, he managed 28 points per game, shooting a staggeringly high 56% on his twos, along with 38% from deep. Plus, he can create well for others, and is also a positive on the defensive end of the floor, despite what the naysayers say. He and Garland make a good case to be the best guard duo in the league, up there with Young and Murray. Beyond these two elite scorers, they have two good defensive anchors inside. Jared Allen holds down the fort around the rim pretty well. He dunks everything, rebounds, and he can protect the paint. Although we have seen him come and go with his impact, which isn't the best thing in the world. Meanwhile, Evan Mobley, I am incredibly high on. His defensive game is all NBA worthy for a reason. He matches up well both inside and out, posting one of the best defensive ratings in all of the league last year. And on offense, though the outside shot isn't very good, he has come a long way as a mid-range and around the rim scorer. The 3 spot is the weak link for Cleveland. I imagine Karis LeVert will get the nod early on, but in my opinion, I think he'd be a better player off the bench because he's not a very good defender against bigger guys, and he's a good 3-point shooter, so it'd be nice just to have him off the bench as a scorer. Isaac Okoro might start since he is the stronger and better defensive player, but Okoro is just a terrible offensive player, so either way they're going to have a weakness there. Then you have newcomers Max Strus, who proved himself as a floor spacer last year, Georgie Niang, who can hit the long ball and be a bigger body to help play the backup big man minutes, and Ricky Rubio is looking for a comeback season after dealing with injuries for the better part of the last 2 years. He is a crafty playmaker and sneaky around the rim finisher. He is rested, and I expect he will have a big role this year. It is a not popular opinion to predict the Cavs so high, but this team, in my opinion, deserves it. Finishing second is the team a lot of people have finishing first, but I'm not going to do it. I have the Milwaukee Bucks. This was a very loud offseason for the Bucks, which shocked just about everyone because it wasn't until late September when anything happened. Damian Lillard is now a Buck, and with him, the already proven contenders' offensive ceiling just skyrocketed. With Milwaukee, Lillard won't be getting 20 shots a game, like he did with Portland, so the people online predicting him and Giannis to average 30 apiece are a bit silly, but I know he can give them around 24 a night while helping with the floor spacing a ton. His confidence late in games will help the team come out on top on many close occasions, which during the regular season will drive their win total up close to 60. But defensively, you would be a fool to overlook his shortcomings. Throughout his career, Lillard has been a negative on that end of the floor. Now at 33 years old and after a few noteworthy injuries that kept him off the floor for long periods of time, he is probably worse than ever. This is where everyone else will be counted on. Giannis Antetokounmpo is the team's best player. The Greek Freak is a top 4 player in the NBA. His offensive game may be predictable, but his aggressiveness and willingness to take the uncomfortable shot and hit them at a reasonable rate is what gives defenses nightmares. It does not matter who is in his way, he is going to put up 30 points and grab 10 rebounds a game against everyone. And defensively, Giannis is an all-NBA caliber stopper every night guarding 1 through 5. This guard-forward pairing is awesome. Now, throw in Chris Middleton, hopefully returning to his old form after an injury kind of derailed him last year. Brooke Lopez hitting the long balls and defending the rim at an elite rate. And Bobby Portis filling in the reserve role thanks to his versatility on both ends. The Bucks are set to be great, but they aren't very high quality beyond these 5. Pat Connaughton is a serviceable defender, but that's about it. Malik Beasley is an okay shooter, but that's about it. Robin Lopez has a pretty hook shot, and that really is it. And Jay Crowder fell off. So they need somebody else to dig deep and get better, in my opinion, if they want to finish at the very top of the East. And finally, the team that I have finishing first in the Eastern Conference, the Boston Celtics. The Celtics are far and away the best team in the East and make a good argument for having the most stacked first five in all of the NBA. Let's go through them in order. Starting with their newcomer Jrue Holiday, it has been said that the best option at stopping Damian Lillard is Holiday. And this is for a very good reason. Holiday has made 5 All-NBA defensive teams in his career. And even at now 33 years old, he is still a hound around the perimeter, and he does an excellent job not fouling. On offense, Holiday is also a more efficient shooter than Lillard, believe it or not, though his attempts are significantly fewer. Still though, 9 twos a game last year, he shot 54%, and 6 threes a night, he hit 38%. The opposition will be forced to stick to Holiday far more than they ever had to when Marcus Smart ran the point guard. Holiday also has plenty of experience playing with superstar teammates. I envision him not only making everyone around him better, but next to him, they also have the league's highest guaranteed moneymaker who is going to thrive, Jaylen Brown. Brown is an excellent rim attacker and mid-range jump shot maker, and defensively, he is consistently one of the league's better perimeter stoppers. I imagine he will get easier catch and shoot opportunities alongside Holiday. Next, you have the face of the franchise, Jason Tatum. Tatum and Brown have similar games, each with slightly different strengths. Tatum being shooting the long ball a little bit better and rebounding. That may sound like a pretty lazy take, but they're really good at basketball, guys. Then at the 4, they have Kristaps Porzingis joining their team. After injuries derailed his brief Dallas career, Porzingis figured it out last year with Washington. He evolved his game to what it is today. Now, he is far more landlocked than he used to be back in his New York days, but he has filled out very well and he has honed his shooting skills to an elite rate. Porzingis is an elite shooter anywhere from the rim to the outside. His ability to put the ball on the floor at his extreme size is unstoppable. Like, he plays the way that people hope Victor Wembanyama is going to play. And on defense, he is a cheat code defending the rim and getting out to the perimeter. I can see him making an all-defensive team this year if things go as I think they will. Then you have the 5, which is the weakest link, although a lot of teams would do anything to get Al Horford. Defensively, Horford won't block a lot of shots, but he is a smart, on-the-floor defender who does a lot of things that do not show up in the box score. Also, he hit 44% of his threes last year on 5 tries a game. That's amazing. This first 5 is unstoppable. Then you have the all-defensive team and potential 6th man of the year, Derek White, running the show behind Holiday. Plus you have Peyton Pritchard, who I think is underrated and people should keep an eye on. Then you have even Sam Hauser, who's a good three-point shooter. I think the Celtics are stacked. Now, admittedly, they're not truly stacked in the forward spot like on the depth chart, but they have so much firepower, I can't imagine anyone winning more games than them. And there you have it, my 2024 Eastern Conference rankings. Thank you all for sticking with me to the bitter end. Please let me know what you think down below. What is your 1 through 15, or at least tell me what you would do different than mine. Stick around for my Western Conference preview, and I will see you all next time.